I'm stuck paying Nicole $2,000 a month in spousal support, keeping up with the mortgage, and shelling out $1,000 in child support. On top of that, I've got to maintain my daughter's health insurance until she turns 18. And if she goes to college, that's my burden too. All of this was laid out by the judge, costing me over $6,500 each month. It's hard to swallow, especially since Nicole has been sleeping with a bunch of the lawyers at her firm, and now they're running the show, milking me dry. My name's Evelio Mott, and my ex-wife, Nicole, has turned my life into a living hell. Our daughter, Victoria, is the light of my life. To say she's daddy's little girl wouldn't even begin to cover it. I spent every free moment with her, taking her places, doing things together. When we were in court, she told the judge she wanted to stay with me, but he brushed her aside like it didn't matter. That whole trial was a joke, and the child support decision, ridiculously inflated. Nicole's got a job and brings in money. There's no reason I should be paying for her on top of everything else. I could see I was getting cheated, and I'm pretty sure the judge was in on it too. But I'm not the type to take this lying down. No, I was already mapping out how to make her regret every choice she's made. I can be downright ruthless when someone crosses me. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, over in Lansing, Illinois, I learned real fast how to make people pay when they hurt me. Some people like to call me an entrepreneur, but I just see myself as someone who grabs opportunities, legal or otherwise. Now, I'm in real estate, owning several rental properties, vending machines, and another business that's going to come in handy for paying Nicole back. I own a coin-changing business, sort of like Coinstar, with machines all around Chicagoland and northern Indiana. That's where the fun comes in. I'll pay Nicole her $2,000 in spousal support, but I'll do it all in coins. She'll have to drag them to the bank, where they'll make her roll every last cent. Maybe one of her lawyer boyfriends can help her with that. Nicole stayed home with Victoria until she started school, and after that, she worked part-time for a few years. Then, out of the blue, she decided to become a paralegal, took some courses for a couple of years, and soon enough, she was job hunting. About 6 weeks later, she landed a spot at a big law firm in town. I'll admit, she's smart, but let's not kid ourselves. Her looks, even at 32, likely played a big role in getting that job. She wasn't just one of many paralegals for long either. Some young hotshot attorney took a liking to her and made her his assistant. Looking back, I wonder if she was already scheming back then. Like the idiot I was, I fully backed her career choice. She'd come home tired but smiling, and now I can't help but question why she was so tired, and what those smiles were really for. We had a nice house in Oak Forest, a solid working-class suburb of Chicago. It was home. We'd fixed it up, made it our own. But as she climbed higher in her law firm and started hanging out with younger lawyers and senior partners, her attitude shifted. Suddenly, our house wasn't good enough anymore. She started saying we needed to move to a fancier neighborhood, claiming that with the money we made and her working at some big-shot law firm, we should show off our success. I loved that house. I didn't need to live in some over-the-top, expensive suburb, but she wouldn't let it go. After 2 years of constant nagging, I finally gave in on one condition. We'd keep our old place and rent it out, adding to my portfolio. So we bought a mansion in Wilmette, on the north side of Chicago. It wasn't right on Lake Michigan, but it was close enough. To afford the $900,000 price tag, we had to take out a jumbo loan. Nicole went wild decorating the place with brand new furniture, all her style, but I never felt at home there. Thinking back, I think that move was the start of our downfall. She wanted to flaunt our wealth and live large, while I just wanted to stay humble, be the quiet millionaire next door. We were aiming for two completely different lives. Now, let's get back to that judge's decision in our divorce. Over the next month, I started plotting my moves. Sure, Victoria would get child support, but Nicole wouldn't touch a penny of it. I'd stash it all in a separate account for Victoria to use as she pleased. I also made sure my daughter would have the best health insurance money could buy. Nicole, on the other hand, would be stuck with catastrophic insurance with an absurdly high deductible. She'd have to pay out of pocket for most of her medical expenses unless she got seriously ill. Then, after 30 days, the policy might cover something. When it came time to make that first spousal support payment, I sent an armored truck to deliver it. The driver knocked on the door of the mansion, and wouldn't you know it, Nicole wasn't alone. One of her lawyer boyfriends was there with her. The driver informed her he was delivering the first payment, and she just looked confused, probably wondering why a huge armored truck was sitting in her driveway. By then, a few nosy neighbors had come out of their McMansions, probably thinking she'd hit the lottery or something. They watched as two guys lugged bag after bag of coins into the front room, dumping them all over the pristine Italian marble floor. The sound echoed across the street, where I stood by my truck, recording it all on my phone. As the truck rolled away, she spotted me and started shouting. I just waved and called back, "Hope you enjoy your money," before hopping into my truck and driving off. It wasn't a shock when a guy approached me the next Tuesday asking if I was Evelio Mott. I ignored him at first, but he kept pushing. "Excuse me, sir, are you Evelio Mott?" When I still didn't answer, he snapped a picture of me and handed over a subpoena. I didn't take it, so he tossed it on the ground, muttered, "You've been served," and walked off. Once he was gone, I picked it up. I was expected in court the following Wednesday, which gave me a week to get everything in place. I spent that week making calls, arranging meetings, and prepping for court. I met up with Victoria for lunch, and she was furious with her mother. She couldn't believe how awful Nicole had become. Victoria had told her mom she wanted to live with me, but Nicole outright refused. I promised my daughter that I'd go back to the judge, even if it meant getting locked up for it. "Don't do anything crazy, Daddy. It's not worth it," she warned me. I smiled and reassured her. "I won't, but I'm going to make a lot of noise, and that might land me in jail. Your mom will love that. Don't worry about me," I added. "I've already set up a trust for you. Uncle Derek will manage it until you're grown. He'll make sure you get everything you need, and your mom won't touch a dime. It's all yours." "Good," she said firmly. "She doesn't deserve anything. That's my girl, strong and turning into a fine young woman. Dad, I'm going to court with you. I'll tell the judge I want to live with you," she insisted. "I don't know if it'll change anything, but we'll give it a shot," I replied. On Wednesday, Victoria, my lawyer, and I waited in the courtroom. Nicole waltzed in with her attorney, shooting me a smug look. "Follow the rules," she sneered. "You can't just do whatever you want. You'll see." When the judge called my name, Victoria marched right up to the podium. "Excuse me, miss," the judge said. "This case is about Evelio Mott. I'm his daughter and I want to live with my dad, not my horrible mother." She spat, glaring at Nicole. "You will not speak like that in my courtroom," the judge warned. "The court has already determined your custodial parent," the judge snapped at Victoria. "But I'm 15. I should have a say in where I live," she protested, standing her ground. "I ruled in favor of your mother," he replied coldly. I glanced at Nicole, and of course, there she was, smirking like she had won some game. My lawyer stepped in, trying to salvage what he could. "Your Honor, we were not made aware of any specific charges or evidence presented during previous hearings." The judge barely looked up. "I'm referring to the psychiatrist's report, and I stand by my ruling. About 4 months ago, we took Victoria to see a psychiatrist because the stress from our messy divorce and her struggles at school were really weighing on her. I knew there had to be something in those records that Nicole thought would sway the judge. But I've always been a good father to Victoria, no matter what Nicole might try to claim. The idea that she was trying to frame me, trying to paint me as some kind of bad guy, made my blood boil. I couldn't believe Nicole could stoop so low, lying to destroy me. The judge wasn't even letting me explain, and I glared at him, thinking, "You'll regret this." Nicole's law firm had clearly pulled the strings on this whole circus, and I was done playing nice. The vindictive side of me was already taking over. Nicole's lawyer then piped up, "Your Honor, we request the court hold Evelio Mott in contempt." My lawyer was just as furious as I was, knowing there was no justice coming our way today. "Your Honor, my client has complied with every part of the divorce decree. There are no grounds for contempt." But, predictably, Nicole's lawyer shot back, "Mr. Mott has failed to provide child support payments to my client." My lawyer didn't miss a beat. "That's correct, Your Honor. The child support was given directly to his daughter, and you can ask her yourself. The judge turned to Victoria, who smiled and nodded, confirming what we'd said. My lawyer continued, "We also have canceled checks for the insurance payments and the mortgage." I glanced over at Nicole and her lawyer. They looked rattled, scrambling to come up with something. Finally, her lawyer spoke again. "Your Honor, the spousal support payment being delivered in change is causing my client undue hardship. Can we request that future payments be made by check?" The judge, now having a chance to speak, said, "That does seem reasonable." But before he could say more, my lawyer quickly jumped in. "Your Honor, may I ask a question?" "Go ahead," the judge replied, a bit irritated. "Is the Chicago Police Department considered part of the legal system?" The judge, confused, answered, "Yes, of course." "Then why?" my lawyer continued. "When my client's car is impounded, is he not allowed to pay with a check? He's required to pay with either cash or credit." The judge fumbled for a response. If the police, who are part of the legal system, don't accept checks, then why is my client being forced to pay by check in this court?" The judge, clearly flustered, finally snapped. "Because this is my court, and I make the rules here." That was it for me. I couldn't hold back any longer. I stood up and yelled, "You're biased. You're in my wife's pocket, just trying to please her law firm. Did she sleep with you, too?" The judge's face turned red with fury. "Mr. Mott, I find you in contempt and sentence you to 6 months in Cook County Jail unless you apologize and comply with my court's orders." "Who do you think you are? The king of this kangaroo court?" I shouted back, not caring about the consequences anymore. The judge was stunned, then barked, "Bailiff, take him into custody." I looked at Nicole and her lawyer, both of them wide-eyed and speechless. I smiled and said, "Good luck getting that money now, loser." They had no clue how much their lives were about to change. The bailiff hauled me off to be strip-searched and thrown into a cell. It felt like a prison because, in every sense, it was. 2 guards questioned me about my disrespect toward the judge, but I wasn't afraid of prison. At 6'4" and 255 pounds, with years of working on rental properties, I was in shape, and besides, I'd been through juvie as a kid. This wasn't new to me. After processing, I was led to my cell. Ignoring the constant noise and shouting, I kept to myself, sticking to the shadows, determined to stay out of trouble. When it was time for the evening meal, I grabbed my tray, leaned against the wall, and watched as the other prisoners acted tough, trying to puff themselves up. Then, amidst the chaos, a voice from my past rang out. Tex. I hadn't heard that name in decades. Back when I was running the streets, the guys used to call me Texas. I looked over and saw Razor, an old friend from those days. He walked over, and as he did, a lot of eyes followed him, turning toward me. I set my tray down and clasped arms with him. "Razor, you old devil. How've you been?" "Well, considering where we are, I'd say not so great." "I bet the same goes for you. What are you in for?" he asked. "I told a judge he was an idiot," I said with a grin. "Yeah, that'll do it," he chuckled. "How long you got?" 6 months, unless I apologize." "So, 6 months," I replied. We talked for a while, and I could feel the other prisoners watching us closely. Razor filled me in on the prison dynamics and promised to keep an eye on me. I was thankful for a friend in here. We reminisced about the old days. "So, what are you planning to do about your ex, her boyfriends, and that judge?" Razor asked after I told him everything. Razor knew me from back in the day. Revenge was practically in my DNA. That's how I got the nickname Tex, as in don't mess with Texas. Anyone who crossed me back then regretted it, and I made sure they never forgot. "What happened with the judge?" Razor asked, curious. "He took my little girl away from me, even though she begged to stay with me," I said, feeling my anger rise again. "Oh man. So what are you going to do about it?" Razor asked, knowing full well I already had something brewing. "I've got some plans. I figured I'd end up in here, so I started prepping a few weeks back." I told him. "Need any help?" Razor offered. "Maybe. For now, just having you as a friend in here is enough," I said, grateful for his support. I'll introduce you to a few guys. It's good to have people watching your back in here, Razor said. After meeting some of his friends, Razor and I shared a few stories about our days causing trouble in Lansing. There were some laughs, but mostly just nods. Turns out our stories weren't much different from the others in here. That night, as I lay on my bunk staring at the cold walls, I couldn't help but ask myself how my life had come to this. My mind wandered back to my childhood. By most people's standards, it was rough. My dad was a mean drunk, and my mom was spineless, even when he started hitting me. I spent most of my time on the streets, falling in with a group of guys in similar situations. We weren't a real gang, but we acted like it. Lansing had a high crime rate, and we sure weren't helping it. Most of what we did was small stuff, but we did steal a few cars, which landed me in juvie. Looking back, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. Sure, it was tough, but it gave me time to think about what I wanted from life. By the time I got out, I was determined to do something meaningful. By the age of 20, I had saved enough to buy a foreclosed house in my neighborhood. That was the first of many properties I fixed up and rented out. At 22, I found myself in some club, hoping for a little luck. I can't even remember the name of the place. It went through so many changes over the years before they tore it down to build condos. That night, though, I thought my luck had turned because that's when I met Nicole. We hit it off right away. Her life was nothing like mine. She had just moved to Chicago to live with a friend, coming from Seymour, Indiana, John Cougar Mellencamp's hometown, though he was long gone by the time Nicole was born. Growing up in a small Midwestern town gave her a different perspective on life, and I guess that's what drew me to her. Opposites attract, right? A year later, we were married, and a year after that, Victoria was born. She was named after Nicole's mother, and that's when I bought a house in Oak Forest to rent out. But Nicole loved it so much that she wanted it to be our home. We spent the next decade fixing up that house together, and honestly, those were the best 10 years of my life. We tackled home projects as a team, watched our daughter grow up right in front of us, and hosted neighborhood barbecues like we were living the American dream. Life felt good. But then Nicole landed a job at a law firm, and everything changed. Mostly her attitude. The simple life we had wasn't enough for her anymore. Suddenly, she had to have expensive clothes, pricey jewelry, and fancy dinners with her colleagues, leaving our old barbecues in the dust. She even started putting down the South Side like she was too good for it now. Sure, the South Side isn't perfect, but for a girl who grew up in the middle of nowhere, acting like she was above everyone rubbed me the wrong way. We fought about her attitude more than once. Soon enough, she was pushing hard for us to move to the North Side. 3 years ago, we gave in and made the move. The schools were better, but Victoria hated it. The stuck-up attitude of her classmates made school unbearable for her, and honestly, I felt the same way about the people around us. Victoria kept begging to go back, and so did I. But Nicole? She couldn't care less. She had what she wanted. The real breaking point came on what started as a regular evening. Nicole called me around 6:30, saying she was going to a dance with some paralegals from work. Something didn't feel right, so I tracked her phone and decided to see for myself. Standing in the shadows, I watched her. She wasn't with her coworkers at all. She was on the dance floor, grinding against random guys, completely lost in the moment. By 9:15, I went to the restroom, and while I was in the stall, 2 guys walked in, talking loudly. "Man, Joe, you were about to take Nicole right there on the dance floor." One of them laughed. "Yeah, she's wild," Joe replied. "You're lucky. She's going home with you tonight. Way better than sneaking around in the office or the back seat of your car," Joe said smugly. "Quickies are nice, but they don't beat a full night." The other guy chimed in. "We're going all night, man," Joe bragged. "Maybe next week it'll be my turn," the other guy said as they left, laughing. Guys like to talk big. But this wasn't just bragging. Felt way too real. When I came out of the restroom, I saw Nicole wrapped around one of them, making out on the dance floor like she didn't have a husband at home. Around 9:30, she texted me, saying she'd had too much to drink and didn't feel safe, so she was going to crash at her friend Rosie's place. I texted back, "Sure," and she replied, "I'm sorry." Yeah, she'd be sorry soon enough. I watched as she grabbed her purse and walked out, holding hands with that same young lawyer from her office. They were so into each other, she didn't even notice me following them. They hopped into his Lexus, kissing and groping each other like teenagers. I was furious, but my Southside instincts kicked in, and I stayed calm. My mind was already working out my next steps. I followed them back to his building. Once they were inside, I headed back to the mansion. When I got there, I told Victoria we were leaving for good. She needed to pack everything she wanted because we weren't coming back. She was excited but a little worried, asking, "What about Mom? There are plenty of other guys taking care of her now," I told her. She understood right away. It took us a few hours to pack everything into the truck, but fortunately, our old house in Oak Forest had just been vacated, so we had somewhere to go. The next day, around 11 a.m., Nicole called me, her voice tense. "Evelio, what's going on? Where are you?" "Home," I said flatly. It took her a second, but then it hit her. "Why? I don't know you anymore, and I don't want to." "Victoria is with me because she doesn't want to live with you in that place," I replied. Nicole, still trying to play it cool, probably not sure if I knew about her affair, said, "Come on, Evelio. Just because you don't like living in luxury doesn't mean you can take our daughter and run." "No, Nicole, but cheating on me does. Expect divorce papers next week." She sighed, her voice turning venomous. "You Southsider piece of trash. You have no idea what kind of hell you've just brought on yourself. My firm will destroy you. That may be, but in the end, I'll come out on top. You haven't seen the full extent of what I'm capable of yet." I warned her. For the next 6 months, Nicole made no effort to reconcile. She even bragged about dating other lawyers, but I couldn't care less. There was no turning back now. I had to fight to get Victoria back with me, but to do that, she needed to be in school. Victoria kept me in the loop, telling me Nicole was out almost every night, coming home well past midnight. She said her mom constantly criticized me, saying I had no class and that Victoria should aim to marry rich like the boys at her school so she could live in luxury. But Victoria always stood up for me and told Nicole she wanted to go back to Oak Forest. Now, lying here in jail, I'm sure Nicole thinks she's won. She probably believes a few days in jail will knock some sense into me. But if anything, it's only given me more time to plot my revenge. I wonder if she started thinking about how she's going to handle the mortgage, insurance, and support payments on her own. She has no idea what's coming. Then, on Thursday afternoon, something unexpected happened. 2 guards came and ordered me to follow them. They took me to a room for a video conference. "What is this? If this is about the judge, I want my lawyer present," I demanded. They shoved me inside and barked, "Sit down. You're not talking to the judge. You're being sentenced." They slammed the door behind me. I pounded on the door, yelling to be let out. After 10 minutes of pacing and shouting, the door finally opened, and 6 inmates walked in. I knew right away what this was about. They were here to establish dominance. I wasn't going down without a fight. "Don't mess with me. You'll regret it." I warned them, but one of them lunged at me. I smashed my fist into his face, hearing his nose crack, but then the rest of them swarmed me. I fought like hell, swinging, kicking, pinning them against the walls, but the biggest one, a good 6 inches taller than me, got me in a chokehold. I kept fighting until everything went black. When I came to, I was in the infirmary, bruised, bloody, and in serious pain. I knew what had happened. They needed to break me, and they did it the hard way. Sunlight streamed through the window as I lay there, staring at the ceiling. The nurse came over, and I glared at her with all the rage I had for this system that had taken my daughter, drained me financially for my ex, and now put me in this place. She met my gaze, unfazed by my anger. "I'm here to help you, not hurt you. You've been through something traumatic. You can either let me help you heal, or you can stay here and suffer. Your choice," she said, her tone indifferent, but I could tell she wanted to help. I softened my glare, managing a small, "Sorry. You've been through a lot. I can only imagine the anger you're carrying," she replied, walking away before returning with a plate of food. She unclenched my hand and placed the plate in front of me. "Thanks," I muttered. "You're welcome," she said. As I ate, I started to think about my next move. Can I ask a favor? I said. That depends, she replied. One of the inmates, Raymond Tanner, is an old friend. Can he visit me? We'll see, she said, her tone giving nothing away. Later that afternoon, Razor was allowed to visit. When he saw me, his face fell. Oh no, he muttered, knowing full well I wasn't going to let this go. I described the 6 guys who had jumped me, along with the 2 guards. I need their real names, not just their nicknames, I told him. Oh no, he repeated, shaking his head. What are you going to do? An eye for an eye with a twist, I replied, and Razor saw the look in my eyes. He knew things were about to get ugly, and that innocent people might get caught in the crossfire. I'll try to get the names, he said, resigned. That's all I need. I'll handle the rest, I told him. We talked a bit more before they took him back to his cell. That night I could barely sleep, strapped to the bed as I was, but I didn't care. My mind was too busy working out my next steps. The next day, Razor came back with the list of names. He asked again, "What are you going to do?" "The less you know, the better," I told him. "Oh no," he muttered for the 3rd time. Sunday brought a surprise, a mix of good and bad. Nicole showed up, and she wasn't alone. She had brought Victoria with her. Nicole spoke first, her voice dripping with condescension. "So, I see you've finally found common ground with your fellow misfits," she sneered. "What do you want?" I growled, already irritated by her presence. Victoria insisted we come. "Are you ready to apologize and be reasonable yet?" she asked, her tone smug. "Not a chance. And what's this nonsense about me and Victoria? You know I'd never do anything to harm her," I snapped. "How do I know that? She's awfully attached to you, isn't she?" Nicole replied with a self-satisfied smirk, clearly trying to provoke me. "You're a piece of trash," I spat. "Why don't you go back to your lawyer buddies and have them check your, for the trash they stuffed in there? Just so you know, I've heard it's happened before, and they loved it." Nicole's smile grew wider, nastier, as if she'd won this little verbal battle. "I've had enough of this. Send Victoria in." "I'm done talking to you," I said coldly. She smiled that awful smile again, thinking she had me cornered, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. When Victoria came in and saw me bandaged and bruised, she burst into tears. "Honey, don't cry. It looks worse than it is." I tried to comfort her. "Oh, Daddy, I was terrified when I saw you like this. You look like you've been in a car accident," she sobbed. "Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm tougher than I look," I said, doing my best to reassure her. "Dad, I hate Mom for doing this to you. I hate her for making me stay with her and for saying all those horrible things about you," she said, anger boiling over. "I know, but it's okay, Victoria." I started, but she interrupted me. "Don't call me that anymore," she snapped. "I'm Vicky now. I don't want anything to do with her or her side of the family." I told her that, and I haven't spoken to her since Monday. She keeps trying to be all nice to me, but I just ignore her. "Vicky," I said, using her new name, "you look more like me every day, and I couldn't be prouder." She smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. We talked about little things for a while before I asked, "Could you do something for me?" "Anything, Dad," she replied without hesitation. I handed her a list Razor had made for me. "Give this to Uncle Derek and tell him to visit me as soon as possible." Derek, my younger brother by 3 years, had been through the same rough childhood I had, growing up with our abusive drunk of a father. I did my best to protect him back then, and he grew up to be a smart guy getting into computers early on. We chatted for a little longer, but then Nicole came back in and said, "Victoria, it's time to go." Vicky didn't even look at her. She just got up, gave me a tight hug, and walked out without saying a word. Nicole glared at me as she said, "Your daughter's just as stubborn as you." I just smiled as she left, knowing exactly where Vicky's loyalty lay. On Tuesday, Derek came to visit. He was clearly shocked by how I looked. "You're looking better than you did on Friday," I joked, trying to lighten the mood. "I'm glad I waited," Derek said. cracking a small smile before switching to our old code language from childhood. It was a private language we'd invented to talk about Mom and Dad without them understanding us, and now we used it for secret conversations. Vicky gave me the list, he said. I've done some initial research. What exactly are you looking for? I need the addresses of their wives or steady girlfriends, I replied. Derek looked at me with concern. Oh no, he muttered. That's all you need to do, I said, switching back to the code. Then pass it on to Gummy and tell him to visit me, without the list. Gummy was an old friend from our days in Lansing, still living there, and he knew how to get things done. I can handle that. Anything else? Derek asked. No, that'll be enough for now. But don't be a stranger. All right? I could use a familiar face around here, I said. Aren't you getting out soon? He asked. Not unless I apologize, and you know me better than that, I replied with a smirk. You've always been stubborn, Derek said, shaking his head. Yeah. And that stubbornness kept you safe from Dad's drunken fits, didn't it? I reminded him. Derek just nodded, knowing I was right. I'll check in over the next couple of weeks, see if you need anything else, he promised. That would be great, I said. Later that week, they moved me back to my regular cell. Razor pulled me aside and let me know things were about to get tense. The guards and the 6 inmates who jumped me were still pissed, and it was clear they were planning something. But what they didn't know was that they were the ones about to be taught a lesson. Gummy came to visit a few days later and handed me a note from Derek. Did Derek tell you what happened to me? I asked. Yeah, he filled me in, Gummy replied. Good. I want you to return the favor, but to their loved ones. And make sure there's no DNA left behind. Use Steely Dan or one of his more flexible cousins, I instructed. Gummy nodded, understanding perfectly. Same day, same time, across the board. And make sure they get the message loud and clear. Don't mess with Texas, I added. I'll get the guys together, Gummy said, then left without another word. I knew I could count on him to carry out the plan without leaving a trail. A week passed in silence, and I heard nothing. I was also waiting to see Vicky again. I didn't want to see Nicole, but I knew Vicky wouldn't be allowed to visit without her. Then, on Tuesday morning, I noticed 2 of the security guards were absent. It wasn't their usual day off. One of the 6 prisoners looked distracted, upset even. It must have happened yesterday, I thought. I asked Razor to spread the word. Don't mess with Texas. Soon enough, the name started catching on, and several inmates were calling me Tex. A couple of days later, the 6 prisoners started shooting angry glares in my direction. 2 of the absent guards eventually returned, and they looked ready to kill me with their eyes. But Razor's guys had my back. When one of the prisoners finally approached me, 8 of my new friends were right there with me. The guy sneered, "You're a piece of trash. I don't know how you pulled it off, but my girlfriend dumped me. She told me she didn't want to risk getting hurt anymore. Then she told me, 'Don't mess with Texas.'" I smiled and said, "Sounds like smart advice. I warned you not to mess with me. Now your women know what it feels like. An eye for an eye with a twist. The twist is, you hurt me and I hurt the people you care about. Tell them next time it'll be their mothers." His face drained of color, and he quickly turned back to his group. Not long after, 2 guards came up to me, their faces twisted with anger. "Who do you think you are? We're going to make your life hell here." One of them snarled, "Well then, I guess your wives better get used to being taken in the A. They might even enjoy it," I said, throwing the insult right back at him. One of the guards lost it, lunging at me with fists flying. I didn't fight back. I didn't have to. He beat me until another guard dragged him off, but the whole thing had been witnessed by the other inmates, and I was sure the cameras had caught it too. Back in the infirmary, Beth, the nurse who had patched me up before, greeted me. "Looks like we've got a troublemaker here, huh?" she remarked, eyeing my bruises. "I didn't throw a single punch. The guard just lost it," I explained. "There'll be an investigation this time. Too many witnesses. He'll probably lose his job," she said as she bandaged me up again. "One less scumbag guard," I muttered under my breath. "These guards are supposed to protect you," she said, her tone firm. Yeah, well, he sure didn't protect me last time. If anything, he let it happen. I shot back. Beth told me I'd have to stay overnight for observation. I wondered if maybe she just wanted another look at me. Wrinkles and all. The guard was suspended pending the investigation, but the other one kept giving me dirty looks every chance he got. He didn't dare say anything, though. Maybe he realized that messing with me came with real consequences. It had been 3 weeks since Vicky's last visit, and I was getting anxious. Derek finally came to visit and gave me the bad news. Nicole was flat out refusing to bring Vicky to see me. That just fueled my anger even more. My ex-wife was trying to keep my daughter away from me, and there was nothing I could do from inside this jail cell. At the end of the month, Nicole finally showed up, but she nearly left Vicky at home. Vicky had refused to get out of the car, no matter how much Nicole screamed and yelled at her. By the time Nicole stormed into the room, she was already fuming. Your daughter is impossible. She barely talks to me. She's as stubborn as you are, she hissed, her voice dripping with frustration. You said that last time. Maybe you should ask the judge to reverse his decision and let her live with me. I'd gladly take her off your hands, I suggested calmly. You're not getting her. She needs to go to a good school, so she can accomplish something with her life. Nicole shot back, her tone condescending. Oak Forest is a good school, and she loved it there, I countered. It's nothing compared to Wilmette. She's getting a top-notch education and meeting people who will help her in the future, Nicole argued. Our daughter will make her own way in life. She doesn't need to ride anyone's coattails to succeed. I insisted, my patience wearing thin. You're too stubborn to see the advantages of what I'm doing. Nicole snapped, her temper flaring again. Nicole, we've been over this 100 times. You're not going to change my mind, and I won't change yours. So why are you here? I know you didn't come just to bring Vicky, I said, cutting to the point. Her name is Victoria, not Vicky, Nicole corrected me with a sneer. Well, that's not what she wants to be called. Don't you care about her being independent? I challenged. You mean stubborn, Nicole retorted. No, I mean independent. Able to think for herself and decide what's best for her, I explained, holding back my irritation. Anyway, I need the spousal support payments. I have bills to pay, she demanded, switching gears. You'll have to figure that out on your own. I don't have access to any funds while I'm in jail. No job, no paycheck, I replied, shrugging. What do you mean? I can't cover all the bills on my salary, she whined, her tone turning desperate. You should have thought about that before dragging me to court, I said coolly. You were acting like a jackass, paying me in change, she accused. And now, because I'm in jail, you're not getting paid at all. Good luck with that, I responded with a laugh. You have to pay, she insisted. No, I don't. What are they going to do? Throw me in jail for not paying? I'm already here, I said, mocking her. What am I supposed to do about the bills? She cried. Get one of your lawyer buddies to help. You deserve it, I said with a smirk. With that, she stormed out, furious. Vicky came in next, and seeing her face instantly brightened my mood. Wow, you really pissed her off, Vicky said with a grin. She expects me to keep paying spousal support while I'm locked up. Good luck to her with that, I chuckled. How are you holding up, Dad? Vicky asked, her concern clear. Don't worry about me, honey. I'll be fine. What about you? I hear you're still not talking to your mom, I said. Not really. Only when I absolutely have to, she replied. When are you getting out? She asked, her voice quieter now. Honey, I'm not apologizing to that pompous judge. The only way I'd apologize is if he gave me full custody of you. I don't see that happening anytime soon, so I'll probably be here until my 6 months are up, I explained. I get it, she said sadly. You know, my birthday's next month. I'd love it if you were out so we could celebrate, but I don't want you to go against your principles. We can celebrate when you get out. Her words tore at me. I started to reconsider my stance, realizing that being here was hurting my little girl more than I'd thought. But then, Vicky said something that shifted my perspective. If a man has no principles, he has nothing. Like Abraham Lincoln said, important principles may and must be inflexible, she recited. Where did you hear that? I asked, surprised by her wisdom. My school counselor, Dr. Rivera. It's been great to have someone to talk to about all of this. My grades were slipping and the teachers noticed, so they sent me to her. She's really helped me deal with Mom, although I still barely talk to her, Vicky explained. Of course, in a school system like Wilmette's, the counselor would be a doctor of psychology. These rich kids didn't settle for just any school counselor. Your mom seems pretty mad at you, too, I noted. Yeah, and she's starting to get on my nerves. I just ignore her, and it seems to drive her crazy. I kind of like it, Vicky said with a defiant smile. In a few months, she's going to need to find a new place to live. The bank's not going to let that jumbo loan go unpaid for long. The mansion will probably be foreclosed on in 3 months, I said. But Dad, won't the foreclosure hurt your reputation? She asked, concerned. Honey, when you buy everything with cash, you don't have to worry about credit. That mansion is the only thing I ever took a loan out for, I explained. Really? Wow, Dad. Even with all your leases and businesses, you've never taken out a loan. I used the income from one business to buy the next, I said matter-of-factly. Daddy, I've always respected you, but now I respect you even more, she said, beaming with pride. Thank you, sweetheart. You really know how to lift my spirits, I said, feeling genuinely touched. It was a wonderful visit, and seeing Vicky always left me wishing I could be with her more often. Missing her birthday would be hard for both of us, but I knew she'd be fine. She's a strong kid. The following week, I found out that the guard who had beaten me was fired. It's hard to argue with video evidence showing I didn't even fight back. A few days later, the other guard either quit or got transferred. I didn't know which, but I was just glad he was gone. Some of the inmates even thanked me for getting rid of those rotten guards, and I think it earned me a bit more respect around here. More people were calling me Tex, and things got a little easier after that. The 6 prisoners were still furious, though. Word around the block was that one of their wives had filed for divorce, and 3 others had been dumped by their girlfriends. Maybe even idiots can learn a lesson when they get hit hard enough. A couple of weeks later, I received a subpoena to meet with the judge over a video conference. When a guard came to escort me, I refused. I'm not meeting with anyone without my lawyer present, I said firmly. But the judge is already waiting, the guard insisted. I don't care. I want my lawyer. Have them reschedule. It's not like my calendar's full, I replied, unbothered. The guard hesitated, then turned and walked away. 3 days later, I was informed the meeting had been rescheduled for the following week. I requested a half-hour with my lawyer before the meeting to go over things, and they agreed. When the day came, my lawyer and I met briefly. He said he wasn't given any details about the meeting, which seemed odd. I guess we'll have to play it by ear, he said. When the judge finally appeared on the screen, it was clear he wasn't happy about being put off for a week, but I didn't care. To me, he was just another piece of trash hiding behind a robe. My lawyer jumped right in. Your Honor, may I ask what this meeting is about? We weren't given any information, just a time to be here. Your client didn't need to involve you, the judge said. I just wanted to see if he's ready to apologize for his outburst. My lawyer glanced at me, and I leaned in to whisper. He nodded and turned back to the judge. Your Honor, my client is not willing to apologize. In fact, he requests that you apologize to him. He also asks for primary custody of his daughter. My lawyer stated firmly. The judge looked stunned. How could I apologize? Of course, I won't do that. My decision regarding the child stands, and I have nothing to apologize for, he replied, clearly offended. Well, then I suppose we've wasted our time here. If my client changes his mind in the future, we'll request another meeting. Good day, Your Honor, my lawyer said, preparing to end the call. Wait, the judge added. Now we were getting to the real reason for this meeting. Your client is not complying with the terms of the divorce decree. When does he plan to resume spousal maintenance and mortgage payments? I leaned in to whisper again, and my lawyer spoke up. Your Honor, My client has no plans to make any payments while he's in custody. The house will be foreclosed on, the judge warned. It's not my house. It may be my ex-wife's mansion, but it was never mine. I never wanted it in the first place, I said bluntly. It will ruin your credit and you'll lose all your equity, the judge said, as if that might scare me. A small price to pay to see my ex-wife walking down the street where she belongs, I replied with a smirk. Then I added something I knew would send the judge into a tailspin. Maybe all of Nicole's buddies can pitch in on those payments. I'm sure you could all come up with the money together. By implying my wife was sleeping around with half the town and that he might be one of her lovers, I knew it would strike a nerve. You worthless piece of Southside trash. Who do you think you're talking to? The judge bellowed, his face red with fury. I think I'm talking to a man who's shared my wife's bed. If I'm wrong, I apologize. I just don't get why anyone not involved would be so bothered, I said calmly, standing up and walking toward the door. As I was leaving, I heard the judge explode again. Counselor, your client just earned himself 2 more months in jail. If he keeps disrespecting me, I'll make his life a living hell. I couldn't help but smile as I waited for the guard to take me back to my cell. The guard seemed stunned, probably unable to believe what I had just done. When I got back to my cell, I was still on edge. It was clear Nicole had been running her mouth about the mortgage to her buddies, and now they'd pulled the judge into their little scheme. What a damn rat's nest. But their time would come. I'd make sure of it. The next Sunday, Nicole couldn't resist coming to see me again. Of course, Vicky found out and made her bring her along. I heard you pissed off the judge again and got 2 more months. When are you going to learn you can't fight the system? Nicole sneered. Nicole, why don't you just talk to me like a human being? All you're doing is flaunting that Northside attitude, and I don't need it. All I need is for you to make sure Vicky visits me regularly, I said, trying to keep my cool. It's Victoria, she practically screamed. I turned my back on her, refusing to engage further. She cursed under her breath for a few minutes before storming out. Good riddance. When Vicky came in, she had a big smile on her face. Why are you so happy? I asked. Because I'm here to see you, Daddy, she said. That can't be the only reason, I teased. I have a surprise for you, but I can't tell you yet. I need to think it through first. Dad, do you trust me? She asked, her eyes full of mischief. With my life, I replied without hesitation. Then will you sign this paper without reading it? She said, holding out a folded piece of paper. I looked at her, raising an eyebrow. What are you up to? You'll find out soon enough. I thought you trusted me, she teased back. I couldn't help but smile. I signed the paper without reading it. Mom said you did something to get your sentence extended for another 2 months. Is that true? Vicky asked. Yes, I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said. What did you do? I confronted the judge again, I admitted. Well, whatever you did, he probably deserved it, she said with a grin. We talked more about her school and her mom. She kept mentioning Dr. Rivera and seemed curious about things going on behind the scenes. I tried to get her to tell me more about her plans, but she insisted it stay a surprise for now. I'm sorry I'll miss your 16th birthday, but the next time you visit, I'll have a gift for you, I said. What is it? She asked, her eyes lighting up. It's a surprise. I guess we both have surprises coming, I replied with a smile. At the end of our visit, I asked Vicky to invite Ben to come see me next time. Ben was my right-hand man, handling my business while I was stuck in here. Of course, Daddy, she said with a nod. Before I ended up in jail, I had given Ben specific instructions, and I hoped he'd followed through. Now I had one more task for him, a special birthday surprise for Vicky. Later that week, Ben came to visit. He had done most of what I had asked. I then told him about the surprise I had in mind for Vicky's birthday. Are you sure? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, it's the perfect gift for her, I assured him. All right, I'll run it by our lawyer, Ben said. And I'll visit Derek and give him what I've got. He'll know what to do. If he has any questions, he'll come to you. If not, he'll go straight to Gummy. Good. That's exactly what I need, I said, feeling satisfied. Ben left, and I kept a smile on my face all day, knowing that while I was sitting in jail, Gummy would be taking care of things for me, ensuring my revenge was carried out without a hitch. By the end of the month, my reputation among the prisoners had only grown. Word had spread about my run-in with the judge, and soon everyone was calling me Texas. Towards the end of the month, I had another visitor. When I walked into the room and saw Nicole sitting there, I was ready to turn around and leave. "Evelio, please stop. I need to talk to you," she pleaded. "I've got nothing to say to you, Nicole," I replied coldly. "We're going to lose the house. You have to give me some money to stop the foreclosure," she begged. "That's your house, Nicole. I never wanted it. You pushed for it until I gave in. It means nothing to me. With the market crashing, there's no equity left. Let the bank take it. Evelio, you can't do this to me. You have to help," she cried, desperation in her voice. "Go ask your lawyer buddies for help. I'm sure they've got enough money between them. Then you can really live up to the reputation you've earned." I spat. "Why are you doing this to me?" she sobbed. "Why did you lie to the judge and say I was acting inappropriately with our daughter?" I shot back, my voice cold and sharp. She had no response to that. She realized, probably for the first time, just how badly she'd wronged me. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she broke down. I left her there sobbing, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Felt good to finally let it all out. As the guard escorted me back to my cell, he got a call to bring me back. I walked in expecting to see Nicole still crying, but instead Vicky was there. "Vicky, your mom didn't tell me you were here. I wouldn't let her come without me," she said firmly. "I'm sorry I missed your birthday," I said, "but I have a gift for you anyway." "Dad, I knew you'd miss it, and I don't care. I love you, and you don't need to give me anything," she said sweetly. "What a wonderful daughter I have," I thought, feeling a surge of pride. "I don't have the gift with me, but I can tell you what it is. Vicky, the house in Oak Forest, it's yours. It'll be put into a trust for you when you come of age." Her eyes lit up, and a huge smile spread across her face. "When I get out of here, can I live there?" she asked, her voice full of excitement. "Of course," I said. Her smile only grew wider. "Daddy, you've just made things so much easier for me. I still can't tell you what my surprise is, but you'll understand when the time comes. I love you so much." "I love you too, honey," I replied, still puzzled by her secret but happy to see her so joyful. As we talked more, she brought up Dr. Rivera again, her school counselor. The way she talked about him made me wonder if she had a crush on him. I hoped he was professional and had no ulterior motives. I'd have to meet this Dr. Rivera when I got out just to be sure. On the way back to my cell, I couldn't help but smile. Between my showdown with Nicole and my heartwarming conversation with Vicky, it had been a good day. The other inmates noticed the grin on my face, and they knew that in here, a smile usually meant someone had been hurt. They didn't know the details, but they could sense I had come out on top. A few days later, Gummy came to visit me. "It's all set," he said. "We've got a video of your wife, some other paralegals from her firm, some of them married, and a few prostitutes being entertained by the lawyers at the firm. There are even some up-and-coming Democratic politicians, and, of course, a certain judge we both know. They were all bragging about being above the law, doing whatever they pleased. Funny thing is, people don't pay much attention to the janitors. They can come and go as they like. For someone who cleans offices after hours, money talks, and free rent for a year, that speaks volumes. We got the janitors to plant hidden cameras in the conference rooms and offices. I knew we'd gather enough dirt to ruin a few lives. My brother, acting anonymously, of course, would leak the videos online with the slogan, 'Don't mess with Texas.' They'd hit the right websites, and every news outlet and tabloid in the state would go wild with the scandal. Politicians and lawyers would scramble to cover their tracks, but there'd be no way to undo the damage. I smiled and said, 'In a week's time, let the others know what happens next.' 'I will,' Gummy replied, and I headed back to my cell, grinning ear to ear. Razor caught sight of my expression and knew I had just talked to Gummy. 'Holy trash!' Razor said, shaking his head. I just nodded, smiling even wider. As I lay on my bunk, the news of the tapes started to ripple through the prison. Even in our little corner of hell, word travels fast. It wasn't long before I started hearing people whispering, "Don't mess with Texas." My reputation was growing, and I knew it. Then, to my surprise, one of the big guys, the same one from the group of 6 that jumped me, came into my cell. "You're a bad bastard. I'm sorry for what I did to you," he said, looking genuinely remorseful. "I warned all of you not to mess with me, that you'd regret it. Now more and more people are feeling that regret. I return kindness for kindness and violence for violence. I hope you'll accept my apology," he said, his tone almost pleading. "Sure, just remember, being big doesn't mean you're invincible," I replied. He nodded and left without another word. 3 days later, I was summoned before the judge again. My lawyer had already been contacted and was on his way. We sat in the video room, waiting for the judge to connect. "I wonder what this is about," my lawyer said with a sly grin. "Only time will tell," I replied, smirking back. "Oh no," he muttered under his breath, sensing something big was about to go down. When the judge's face popped up on the screen, he was practically trembling with rage. "You did it," he shouted. "Did what?" I asked, keeping my voice calm and detached. "You're Tex, aren't you?" he yelled. "Some people call me that," I said casually. "You're going to pay for this," he fumed. "I've been locked up for the past 4 months. How could I have done anything?" I replied, feigning innocence. "You have friends," he growled. "We all have friends, Your Honor," I said with a sarcastic smile. "You won't get away with this," he shouted again. "I don't know, Judge. Word around here is you might be out of a job soon, and I hear your wife is filing for divorce. You might want to focus on calling off your dogs," I said with a smirk. "Now you're calling my friends dogs?" he barked. "You know, if you back a dog into a corner, it'll bite. Is that a threat?" I asked, still calm. "No, just an old saying," I replied with a shrug. "I'm going to make your life a living hell. When you finally crawl out of this filthy prison, you better watch your back. There are people out there who don't care about your life, and I'll be thrilled with whatever they do to you." The judge spat before cutting the transmission. I turned to my lawyer. "Did you get that?" "Sure did," he said, holding up his phone with a recording of the judge's outburst. "That's intimidation. The Bar Association is going to have a field day with this." A few days later, I had another visitor. It was Nicole again. "Oh, it's you," I said coldly. "I thought I made it clear that I had nothing left to say to you." "You bastard," she screamed. "What are you talking about?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "You got me fired. My face is all over the news and the internet. How could you do this to me?" she whined. "You did this to yourself," I replied, barely caring. "Do you hate me that much?" she asked, her voice cracking. "Yeah, and all your high and mighty law buddies who think they're better than everyone else," I snapped. "When we first met, you were a sweet, small-town girl. Now you're just an uptown bitch who only cares about herself. What am I supposed to do? I don't have a job, and no one will hire me now," she cried, panic rising in her voice. "Move back to Seymour. Live with your parents," I suggested without sympathy. "I can't," she said, her voice breaking. "The local paper ran a story. Local girl at center of Chicago scandal. My parents are planning to take early retirement and move to Florida just to avoid the gossip. Looks like Florida's your destination then. You'll be far away from me," I said coldly. "They don't even want to see me. They barely talk to me anymore," she sobbed. "Wow, your parents don't want to talk to you, and your daughter doesn't talk to you. Starting to see a pattern here," I asked, enjoying the sting my words brought. "You should move and start over, but leave Vicky with me. The minute I get out, I'll petition the court for custody. With your reputation in the gutter, they'll have no choice but to give her to me. You're hardly a good example for an impressionable young girl." "You can't do that. She's all I have left," Nicole protested, her voice shaking. "I don't care, Nicole. You did this to yourself. We had a good life, but you decided to throw it all away for a bit of fun. Maybe you could make a living off it now. Plenty of your lawyer buddies would pay for a good time with an almost 40-year-old whore. Her face collapsed, and for the first time I saw the pain in her eyes. She dropped her head to the table and sobbed, completely broken. "Sucks to be you," I said as I stood to leave. "Did you at least bring Vicky?" "It's Victoria," she screamed. "And no, she's with her doctor friend today." "Well, in that case, I've got nothing else to say to you. Don't come back unless you bring Vicky," I said, walking away as she fumed in her seat. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel any satisfaction. I actually felt sorry for her. She was destroyed. The next day, I saw a news report. A 5-story office building downtown had caught fire. The sprinklers saved most of the floors, but the top one was gutted. I just smiled. Derek came to visit the day after. He told me the law firm's external server had mysteriously crashed, wiping out all their data. Again, I smiled. Couple of weeks later, Vicky came to see me. I could tell she had convinced Nicole to bring her because she walked in with the biggest smile I'd ever seen. "Vicky, you look like you've got some great news. What's going on?" I asked. "I finally finished my surprise for you. You'll never guess what it is," she said, grinning from ear to ear. "Well, based on our last conversation, I'm guessing it has something to do with the Oak Forest house. Don't tell me you and your mom moved there. She'd hate that." "You're half right," she said, looking pleased with herself. "Mom is being evicted from the Wilmette house, and I'm moving into the Oak Forest house." "How can that happen?" "By court order, your mom has primary custody of you until you're of age," I said, confused. "Surprise. I'm legally an adult now," she said, her smile growing even wider. "I achieved emancipation. That's what Dr. Rivera and I have been working on for the past 2 months. Once you put the house in trust for me, everything lined up. I needed a safe place to live, and our old neighborhood is perfect for that." "You're really an adult now?" I asked, still trying to wrap my head around it. "Yep, when I started having problems at school. Mostly because of what was going on at home. Dr. Rivera helped me sort it all out. Now that you're giving me the house, I'm free. When you get out, you can come home." "I can't wait to go back to Oak Forest," I said, smiling. "I've already talked to a lot of my old friends," Vicky said excitedly. "They can't wait for summer to end and school to start again. Mom mentioned you've been spending a lot of time with a counselor. I'd like to meet this Dr. Rivera," I said, trying to hide the suspicion in my voice. I still wasn't sure how I felt about this grown man paying so much attention to my daughter. "Well, you're in luck. Dr. Rivera brought me here today," she said. Now my concerns were growing. "He's driving her around Chicago?" I thought. I needed to get a read on this situation, and fast. "I'll be right back," she said, heading for the door. As I sat there, I wondered how I could politely, but firmly, let this Dr. Rivera know he was walking a fine line. I wanted to make sure he understood that there would be consequences if he stepped out of bounds, without upsetting Vicky. A few moments later, Vicky came back through the door, but to my surprise, she wasn't followed by a man. Instead, a beautiful woman with raven hair walked in behind her. She smiled warmly at me and asked, "How are you doing?" I stared at her in disbelief. "Sam?" I asked. "I haven't heard that name in almost 20 years, she said with a grin. "Sam, no, Samantha, was from my old neighborhood. She wasn't part of my gang, but we had gone to school together." Vicky looked puzzled. "Daddy, how do you know Dr. Rivera?" she asked. Before I could answer, Samantha spoke up. "We grew up in the same neighborhood. Back then, though, he didn't notice me much." Turning to Vicky, I added, "She was a couple of years behind me in school. We didn't really run in the same circles. And he was a bit of a troublemaker back then," Samantha said, smiling. "It seems not much has changed. You're still finding ways to stir up trouble." I flushed slightly. "Yeah. I guess I've never quite mastered the art of keeping my mouth shut." "Seems like it," she teased. "Should I call you Tex?" "Why do you call him that?" Vicky asked, intrigued. "That was his nickname as a teenager," Samantha explained. "He was known for not letting anyone push him around." Your mom definitely crossed him. And I'd bet this whole mess at the law firm is his doing. Guilty as charged, I admitted, unable to keep a grin off my face. Before we could go any further, Samantha turned to me and said, I hope you don't mind me spending time with Vicky. It's Vicky, my daughter corrected, standing firm. Right, sorry, Samantha said. When I first started talking to her about 9 months ago, she was really struggling with everything happening in her life. I was curious if she might be related to you or Derek since Mott isn't a common name. Once I looked into her records and saw her father's name was Evelio. I thought maybe it was you, but I wasn't sure. I only knew you as Texas. When she told me you were in jail, that's when I knew it had to be you. I felt bad about what you were going through but figured you must have changed if you had a house in Wilmette. It was just a house. It was never a home, I said quietly. Vicky chimed in. Yeah, our real home is in Oak Forest, Southside, but in a much nicer part than where we grew up, Samantha added. Yeah, if we'd stayed there, maybe things would have turned out differently, I said wistfully. If Nicole had been happy with what we had, we might still be together. We chatted for a while longer before I pulled Samantha aside. Thank you for helping Vicky. It means a lot to me that she's got someone looking out for her. It's my pleasure. Texas Vicky's like family to me now, and I'm happy to help, Samantha replied. When I get out of here, I owe you a big dinner, I said. I'll hold you to that, she replied with a smile. The next couple of weeks passed uneventfully, following the usual prison routine. Every Sunday, Vicky and Samantha would visit, and it was clear Samantha had taken Vicky under her wing. Vicky mentioned that Samantha was helping her decorate the Oak Forest house, picking out new furniture and decorations. Where's the money coming from? I asked, curious. Uncle Derek, of course, Vicky replied. I've got money set aside for my needs. Samantha didn't pay for anything. She's just been helping. Good. I didn't want anyone thinking Samantha was footing the bill, I said, relieved. Don't worry, Dad. Your man cave is still intact, she added with a playful grin, referring to the basement I had converted into my personal retreat. Living with 2 women sometimes required a little solitude. When they left, I lay back on my bunk, reflecting on how much Vicky had grown. She was now legally an adult. Soon she'd be off to college and beyond. I hoped she'd find someone who appreciated the simple things in life. The following Monday, I had another visitor, Nicole. As soon as I saw her, I turned to leave, but she called out, Evelio, wait, we need to talk. I sighed and turned back reluctantly. What now? I thought. Do you know what our daughter did? She asked, clearly distressed. What are you talking about, Nicole? She got emancipated. She doesn't have to live with either of us anymore. She's already moved out, and I have no idea where she is. Oh, that, I said, trying to sound casual. Yeah, I know. You knew? Did you put her up to it? She demanded. No, she did it on her own. Her school counselor helped her. I said, my voice steady. Where is she staying? With the counselor, Nicole pressed. No, she's back home. She moved back to the south side, I replied calmly. What about school? Nicole asked, exasperated. She'll be back at Oak Forest in the fall, I explained. She hated Wilmette. She was looked down on for being a kid from the projects, as they called it. She never fit into that high society world. You pulled her out of a school she loved and put her in a place that hurt her confidence. I was just trying to make sure she got a good education, Nicole said defensively. Kids learn more from their parents than any school. What do you think your actions have taught her? I asked, my voice soft but pointed. I hope she learns what not to do, Nicole said quietly. Our job was to raise a responsible adult. I hope she can see past our failures, especially our marriage. It wasn't all bad, she added after a moment. No, but it ended badly, Nicole. I hope you find what you're looking for. Clearly, I wasn't it, I said, seeing the sadness and regret in her eyes as I walked away. Finally, the day of my release came. This time I was summoned to a real court. Vicky and Samantha were there, and so was Nicole. As I sat waiting for the judge, I wondered what would happen. I still wasn't planning to apologize. The bailiff ordered us to rise as the judge entered the room. It wasn't the same judge this time. Maybe the other one had lost his job. The new judge reviewed my case, then looked at me directly. "So, Mr. Mott, what do you have to say for yourself?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "I've served my original 6 months, plus an additional 2. At any time, you could have apologized and walked free," he pointed out. "I didn't believe the other judge deserved my apology," I replied. "So I served the time." "You are a stubborn man, Mr. Mott. I prefer to call it strong-willed. It's helped me succeed in business and in life," I said firmly. The judge looked over my divorce agreement and declared, "As for your divorce agreement, it remains in effect. You will have to pay compensation for the months you did not honor it." That's when my attorney stepped in. "Your Honor, my client is prepared to pay what he owes. We estimate the total to be just under $20,000, which he will pay in full today. This should settle all his financial obligations, and he will no longer be required to make any further payments." Nicole shot to her feet, outraged. "What? You owe me more than that. You're supposed to keep paying until Victoria turns 18. The judge held up a hand to silence her. "Miss, I handle the transactions in my courtroom. Counselor, how did you arrive at that figure?" "Your Honor," my lawyer began, "my client covered the initial down payment for spousal support, the mortgage and insurance, and he provided for his daughter's needs. He also continued to pay for her health insurance and other essentials during his incarceration. However, he was unable to pay his ex-wife's spousal support or the mortgage due to his inability to work or receive a paycheck. Now that he is able to work again, he will begin earning money once more." The judge looked over the documents. "Your client has been incarcerated for 8 months. Spousal support alone would be $16,000, not counting mortgage payments. Your Honor, the judgment specifies, until the minor child becomes an adult. The child in question was emancipated 3 months ago. The legal documents are included in your files. Additionally, the house was foreclosed 3 months ago, which eliminates any further mortgage obligations. The amount owed is actually $1,782, but my client is offering to pay $20,000 to settle everything." The judge carefully reviewed the documents and figures. "If this data is accurate, I will accept this amount. You both share a child who, though legally an adult, is still a teenager with needs. Both of you must remain civil for her sake. Can I have your word on that, Mr. Mott?" "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. "And you, Mrs. Mott?" "Yes, Your Honor," Nicole muttered, visibly seething. The judge nodded, then looked at Vicky. "And you?" "Vicky, Your Honor," she said firmly. "But yes, you have my word." "Then, unless this information proves false, this case is closed. Mr. Mott, you are free to go," the judge declared. "Thank you, Your Honor," my lawyer replied, and we all stood up to leave. Vicky rushed over and gave me a huge hug. Samantha stood nearby, smiling warmly. I saw Nicole watching us, her face twisted with anger. She stormed over. $20,000? That's it? That's BS. Why did you choose them over me? They can't help you get back on your feet. You can't do this to me," she ranted. "Nicole, the judge asked us to be civil. Let's try to honor that for Vicky's sake," I said, trying to stay calm. "It's Victoria," she hissed. "Our daughter, all right? What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I have no job, no place to live, nothing," she cried. "You can find another job, and I can put you in one of my apartments rent-free for 6 months to help you get back on your feet," I offered. "You expect me to move back to the South Side?" she whined, incredulous. "It's free rent. How bad could that be?" I replied. Nicole turned away, frustration clear on her face. I turned to Vicky and Samantha. "Ladies, are you ready to go?" "Of course," they both said. "Samantha, I owe you a nice dinner," I added. "I think I remember something like that," she said with a smile. "Let's go to PM Italian. I made a reservation when I knew my release date. I really need to cleanse my palate of prison food," I joked, catching a glimpse of Nicole's anger out of the corner of my eye. "It was our special restaurant." The table is booked for 6:30, so we've got some time. Do you mind if we drive around a bit? I need to get used to my freedom again. Then I turned to Samantha. I made a reservation for 4. Could you call your husband and see if he's available? Samantha's face went expressionless. Vicky spoke up instead. Daddy, she doesn't have a husband anymore. I felt confused. Samantha always wore her wedding ring. I'm sorry, Samantha. I didn't mean to offend you. You didn't know, she replied softly. My husband was killed in a car accident on the Eisenhower about 5 years ago. A car swerved into the divider. He died instantly. I'm so sorry, Samantha. I just assumed you were still married since you wear the rings. Yeah, I can't bring myself to take them off yet. It feels like if I did, I'd be letting him go. I'm truly sorry. Please join us for dinner. I'd like to make it up to you, I said, realizing how selfish I had been, wrapped up in my own problems. Samantha looked sad but nodded. I think that'll be okay. I felt like such a jerk for not asking about her life sooner. I'd been so focused on my revenge that I never thought to ask how she was doing. That would change, starting tonight. I owed her that much. Dinner was fantastic. It felt amazing to be out of prison clothes, to enjoy real food, and not have to look over my shoulder constantly. Freedom felt strange after 8 months, but by the end of dinner, I was feeling more like myself. I decided to take a chance. Samantha, when you're ready, would you let me take you on a real date? No pressure. Whenever it's convenient for you. But until then, can we stay in touch? Daddy, of course, will stay in touch, Vicky interrupted. She's not getting rid of me that easily. And I wouldn't want it any other way, Samantha said with a smile. Mike and I never had children. I was in school and he was busy starting his business. It wasn't the right time. Vicky's been like a surrogate daughter to me. It's been therapeutic, really. I hope you don't mind. After everything you've done for us, I wouldn't want it any other way, I said sincerely. As we left the restaurant, Vicky said, I hope you like the view of our old house. Anything's better than where I've been the past 8 months. I chuckled. When we arrived, I was stunned. The shutters had been painted, the bushes were trimmed, and everything looked perfect from the outside. I couldn't wait to see the inside. Stepping in, the place looked different but felt more like home than ever before. Samantha's touch was everywhere, and it made all the difference. I know it sounds corny, but I cried. This hardened man, this criminal, stood there crying. Evelio, I heard Samantha say softly. I wiped my eyes. I feel at home, I said. Evelio, she repeated, her voice steady. I think I'm ready. I looked at her, confused. Then she slowly took off her wedding rings and smiled at me. I couldn't help but smile back. We hugged. Epilogue. 10 attorneys, for paralegals, 6 politicians, and 1 judge saw their careers and marriages crumble because of the events surrounding my divorce. Stubbornness or willpower, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes you've got to stand by your principles. But on the brighter side, Vicky gained a new mother and a new brother and sister, twins. As for Nicole, she eventually married a wealthy lawyer. She got the status she craved, living in a big house in Winnetka. But now she has a husband who doesn't love her, someone who just keeps her around for appearances. I hope she's happy. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please subscribe to my channel and check out my next video.